Coming up, we're going to talk about how to gain a gospel perspective. Cue the intro. Hey everyone, my name is Billy DeBerry. I'm the youth pastor over at Grace Chapel. I'm making these videos kind of to summarize my sermons that I preach on Wednesday nights over at Grace Chapel for Grace Youth. Shout out to Grace Youth. I'm going to try to keep my online audience in the loop. So what we're going to try to go for is maybe to just condense some of my sermons and give you the points and the message in kind of like a devotional style. So we're going to try to shorten everything, maybe make it 5 minutes, but who knows? So let's get into this. We're going to start in Philippians chapter 1, verse 12, and it reads like this. Now, I want you to know, brethren, that my circumstances have turned out for the greater progress of the gospel. First thing we're going to do is give a setting here. So first, to understand where we're at in Philippians, when Paul is writing this, he is currently chained up to a prison guard under house arrest. Some scholars believe he is located in Rome. He is chained up in prison, and he's writing this letter. And he's writing this letter to a church he has started around 10 years earlier. The church at a place called Philippi. And he's starting to write this letter as a thank you for their gift that they had sent him. They sent a friend over, his name was Epaphroditus, and Epaphroditus had given him a gift. So he's writing this letter as a thank you to the church of Philippi for sending Epaphroditus with a gift, with supplies and money, and he's so excited. So he's writing this, but I want to preface this. I want to start out by giving you first understand what the gospel is. I'm going to simplify it, and the gospel simplified is this. It's the person and work of Jesus Christ. He's expected in the Old Testament, he's revealed in the Gospels, and his work is proclaimed throughout the New Testament. Paul's life would be centered around this man. It would be centered around this idea, this gospel message of Jesus Christ. Paul had one goal. He had one aim, and it was all centered around the gospel. He would actually go on to write things like in 1 Corinthians 2:2, it says, "For I determined to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified." This is the person and the work of Jesus Christ. So this is important to understand, that Paul's life, his only aim, his only goal was the advancement of the gospel. From the outside, all of Paul's circumstances could have been viewed as a setback, as opposition. He has gone through issues and circumstances time and time again, from being stoned to being flogged to being beaten in the streets and being in riots, and all these different things would have marked his ministry as a whole. And so this man, Paul, he had gone through so many struggles that even people today might even question whether or not he's actually doing the right thing. Because if he was really doing the right thing, would all these troubles be surrounding him? A man by the name of Dr. Steve Lawson, he says it like this, and I have this quote for you. God has never promised us a trouble-free life. He has promised us a trouble-free heart. Though Paul's life would be continually marked with troubles, his heart would be free of it. Paul was living for the gospel. He understood something. He understood that though he may be in chains, you can't lock up the gospel. You may have stopped Paul for a moment, but you cannot stop the gospel from going forward. Living like this brings so much clarity to life. It narrows down your life to a single focus, to a laser focus. Situations become very simple. Circumstances always have the same outcome. You always have a goal. You always have an aim. It's the gospel. What is the will of God for my life today? To bring the gospel message to those who need it. That is, to everyone. Paul had this perspective, and I have three points that I want to give you that I hope are beneficial to you. A few things that happen when you start living for the gospel, when you start to put the gospel in its proper place in your life. Number one thing that happens is your setbacks actually become setup. While Paul was in prison in Rome, though he was there for around 2 years, he would actually have the opportunity to write 4 gospel-filled epistles. That is Ephesians, this book, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon, and he would begin to write gospel-filled messages that we are still reading today. and they would circulate around different churches, and so many people have benefited from this 2-year process where he was stuck, where he was trapped or chained up. What others would consider a setback, to Paul was a setup to further the gospel. You could see it today in your life and even throughout the pandemic. To some people, the pandemic was detrimental and horrible, and it locked us up and it contained us. But for others, it was a place where we could narrow down our life to what mattered, where we could learn what was essential. Some people may have stopped working out because they lost their gym membership, and others found the motivation to work out at home. I mean, you have different perspectives in life, and with the gospel at the forefront, every setback becomes an advancement opportunity for the gospel to go forth, and that's how Paul saw it. So number 1, your setbacks become setups. Number 2, your opponents become your opportunities. He would be chained up to the very people who were going to execute him. He is on trial, he is awaiting trial to be beheaded for preaching the gospel. And so he is chained up to the very embodiment of oppression, the Roman guard. Their brutality was unmatched, and so he didn't see them as enemies because the gospel was his purpose, because the gospel and the advancement of the gospel was his aim, his goal. These opponents of his actually became opportunities. And though he dreamed and though he wished he could preach in Rome and preach in an open air setting to maybe the masses, though this setback may have narrowed down his targets, he was able to, instead of preaching to masses, to preach to individuals. And he was able to proclaim the gospel to even the Roman guards. The Bible will go on to say in verse 13, where it talks about the Praetorian Guard, or the royal guard, Caesar's royal guard. These people he was able to reach because he was under house arrest. And so there are people in your lives that you might think they are opposition, they are bullying you, they are saying something mean, nasty. These are opportunities for you to preach to them, to reach them that no one would otherwise reach, and you will be able to reach them with love. A gospel focus brings a focus to individuals. It brings enemies to a place where you can pray for them, to where you begin to love even those who don't love you. And number 3, difficulty is just deliverance waiting to happen. When you experience difficulty, no matter what the outcome might be, with the gospel at the center, if the gospel is the focus, no matter the difficulty, you will always be waiting for the deliverance of God, and no matter the outcome, you will be okay. He knows, Paul, at this instant, that no matter what the outcome, he will never be put to shame. He would continue to write that at around verse 20, but he had an expectation, he had a hope that he would be delivered. And whether he lives, praise God, he was happy that he was able to give the gospel and that he can continue to proclaim the gospel. But if he dies, praise God, at least he was able to reach the people he was around. Either way, God would deliver him, he thought. Whether in death or in life, both he was thankful and both he was hopeful. This kind of gospel focus produces boldness in life because you lack the fear of death. There is no trial that would stop Paul, no political power that could change his mind, no threat that would make him back down. In chains, he was more free than the prison guards he was chained to. In prison, Paul had more reach than Caesar himself. I don't know what you're going through or what setbacks you're facing today, but I know this, that sometimes, though we can't always change our situations, we can gain a better perspective. And I believe that a gospel perspective is a better perspective. I hope you've enjoyed this devotional. I pray that it's encouraged you. Stay blessed. I'm signing off. I'm going to try to make more of these and maybe summarize the rest of my messages and sermons as they come forth. Until next time, remember, take a break, will you?